Welcome to Recombination Nation. Today I am talking with Ambling with Sam. He is what I would describe as an independent agricultural anthropologist and a rather skilled YouTuber. That's how I first got onto his work, traveling around the world and his own backyard, investigating different plants and crops and the cultures that have sprung up around them. So that's my kind of perspective on who I'm talking to today. But I want to hear from Sam himself. What path in life has led you into these really unusual passions?
Yeah, well, I guess in some ways I'm not sure. In some ways I've been interested in plants for as long as I can remember. Like as soon as I learned to read when I was young, I was memorizing the nutrition tables in our food encyclopedia and writing stories about different species of ginger befriending each other, typical 5-year-old stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but I think so I was always interested in plants and how people used them, but what came to drive me to start a YouTube channel with it was wanting to communicate that to others. Because, and it's partly I had an experience when I was up until high school still. I was fascinated with plants, but couldn't really name most of the plants just around me in my backyard in the forest. But I got a job as an interpretive at an interpretive center, and part of the job was leading people around the forest and the prairie area, including little groups of 8-year-olds. And so I kind of, over the course of the summer, I challenged myself to learn to identify as many plants as possible and learn more about them so that I could help people also learn about them and find them fascinating. So over the course of that summer, at the start, I remember I would look at the forest and I would know, okay, that there is an oak tree, that's poison ivy, but otherwise it's just kind of a wall of green and undifferentiated, miscellaneous, generic plants. But at the end of the summer, I could look at it and I could recognize at a glance maybe 80 or 90% of what was there. And then I could look, oh, that one over there, it's got edible seeds that come out. Or, oh, that one's got this interesting interaction with insects or things like that. So I was able to bring that to the school groups that came through, and getting to see their fascination emerge from that was interesting. Because I would start each lesson when I was showing them the prairie with, when you look out at the prairie here, what do you see? And the typical answer I would get would be like, oh, grass. It's a field of grass. Or sometimes I would get, there's weeds in your field. But then I would tell them a bit about it and give them a scavenger hunt where they could just seek out, okay, look for these different shapes, these different colors, maybe smells when you rub the leaves.
Hmm.
And just in that little time, we would group back together, and then I'd get them to show me what they had found, and they'd be excitedly running around showing their friends, oh, look at this plant that's called old man's beard. That was always a hit with the young kids, or things like this. And so I guess getting to see how that fascination could be communicated, that inspired me to turn it into a YouTube channel like this. So
Did you discover a kind of a fun secret language in botanical Latin names as well? It's like the next level. It's almost like a Harry Potter spell to be able to
oh,
pull out those names.
I didn't bring up those often, but you can find some funny ones now and again. That's true. That would have been another little inroad there.
Mm, mm. So let's before we talk more broadly about your experiences in amazing parts of the world that you've traveled to and documented, I want to know like what you're doing closer to home. Do you grow anything yourself, and what are you working with?
I do a little bit. Right now, unfortunately, my garden space is quite limited, living in a city. But I do grow a bit. I've recently kind of got, well, with the Andean crops that'll come up later. I have gotten interested in peppers, and there are many thousands of varieties. That's starting to fill up my patio with potted peppers, and now they're filling up my living room because it's too cold outside. Um, so there's been those. Um, Also, I like to grow herbs that are otherwise hard to find in stores here. So Huacatai from Peru was another one that came from there. I have a pandan plant growing in my closet, just under some
Oh
grow lights,
wow.
and also yeah, a little guava tree, Sacha inchi, which is this Andean plant with these star-shaped pods with nuts growing inside.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
stuff like that. Those have been the best growers so far. Sadly, little of it has been local just because limited space outside, but
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, that kind of determination in limited spaces, it shows that passion.
right.
But do you also do foraging in your part of Canada?
Yeah, yeah, I do. Um, there's a lot of good forageables around this area. There's I guess I mean the most obvious ones are there's a lot of wild berries you can go out and get. We got Saskatoons, choke cherries, quite a few. Though I think there's some good vegetables as well. I do a lot of wild greens. I've sometimes made the mistake of freezing too many for the winter, and then I just have a. You learn how to use up greens quickly, though. That is one benefit there. Milkweed pods. They make a really good vegetable.
Hmm.
I've been interested recently in kind of more herbs and spices that can be foraged. So still need to figure out if this one is actually truly as edible as I hope it is. But we have a plant here called false sarsaparilla, which it's got a taste kind of like a combination of like a grape freezy or grape popsicle with a juniper berry,
Ah.
and I find it works really well if you turn it into like a rub for meat or things like that. Um, Footnote on that one that its edibility is a little bit unknown. It's thought to be, but some people get sick from it. So
There's definitely the dose is the poison kind of issues around
yeah,
plants, and
yeah,
yeah,
and
I
then
mean there's
common and then
yeah,
common allergies too that people might not know about.
yeah. I guess it makes it more exciting to try new things.
It does, it does.
Um, and do you have any interest in breeding crops yourself one day when you get the opportunity?
I do, and actually, that's I guess a fairly recent thing. I know when you had contacted me, I looked into some of your stuff, and that I think sparked a bit of interest in what these. Looking back at the Andean crops and the sheer diversity they got there, and wondering about okay, like the Nunia, the popping beans they have there, is that something that could be localized? And I know you had mentioned a contact for someone to check into. And I found one or two other people that seemed to be working on it, but it got me interested in wondering if some of those could be localized.
Mm, mm.
And yeah, so definitely a budding interest there.
Yes,
No pun
yeah,
intended.
excellent, excellent. I hope you managed to track that down and pick up those threads because yeah,
Yeah.
particularly Carol Deppy is she's getting on in years and
Mm,
yeah, that opportunity if she's the only person growing them seriously, there it might be a limited opportunity.
yeah. I did find one or two other people that might be involved.
Mm,
So,
brilliant, brilliant. Now, let's talk about Andean agriculture first, because this is a part of the
mm,
world which has always captured my interest as well. And when I found
mm.
your amazing YouTube video, Farming the Impossible, I think that's probably the longest one on your channel to date.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
By far. Yeah.
the what you put together, like I would watch that 10 times over a BBC documentary coming out today. I found it just so much more interestingly put together. Yeah, I would strongly encourage people to check that out and the rest of your channel. But so
Thanks.
the end.
I really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm just I want more people to go and enjoy it. But so the Andes is really exceptional as a center of crop domestication. So we've got these little pockets around the world where, maybe a few dozen major species are domesticated, but in the Andes, pretty much every wild plant that they touched, they somehow managed to transform it and domesticate it. And I think they probably would rank as like the highest diversity center of domestication around the world. And do you have any theories about why that is so? Is it the landscape or the ecosystems or the culture or an intersection of all three?
Yeah, I think definitely I would I would theorize an intersection of all three, definitely. And it's interesting because it's kind of a combination of things that are working in their favor in those respects, and also in some ways, some of the things working against them.
Hmm.
Um, So yeah, like the Andes, they are already an incredibly biodiverse region there. I mean, in some places you can walk in about a week from the dry desert coasts over the mountains to the Amazon rainforest on the other side. And through there, you'll cross through high mountain tundra areas that look like, well, at least to me, looked kind of like if you took chunks of the Canadian prairie and just stuck them in mountains, and a whole bunch of smaller micro ecozones in there. So there's tons and tons of plants to choose from. Um, and especially you'll note that in the highlands there, they have a lot of root crops. That's kind of one of the most prominent things where a lot of other places relied on grains. They especially relied on roots. So they have like of the main ones, there's 11 main species, and all 11 come from completely separate families,
Yeah.
and not
Yeah.
and that's not even speaking of the like literal thousands of varieties of some of those, like
Mm.
potatoes. Um, and so one thing with that, it seems to have also not just been a biodiverse region, but it had an ideal environmental conditions for a lot of plants to produce those tubers. So I guess that kind of connects with the why this land was difficult, in that in spite of all that biodiversity, it was a very difficult place to farm in any region of the Andes. Pretty much, you got really unpredictable climate, rains, flood, droughts. Um, it's the epicenter of El Nino events, which drastically affects the rains, the winds, and the fish supply for anyone on the coast. Um, I remember reading, and I think I quoted in that video a scholar who said that even in some of the most densely populated parts of the Andes, crops could fail every 2 out of 3 years.
Mm.
So like really difficult environment. But there, I guess from that there's the saying, "Smooth seas never made a strong sailor."
Yeah.
I think that can really apply to farmers too in this case. So the stakes were really high, but you learn through necessity and desperation what you can eat, what you can't, and what you can eat if you have to process it like crazy to get the toxins out of it too.
Mm.
Some of
Mm.
that. So yeah, they got good at working with that difficult land, modifying, working with it, engineering, um, and breeding crops. And a big thing they did was try. They seem to have consciously maintained diversity a lot of the time in order to buffer against those bad years. So that yeah, you plant 4 varieties of potato and maybe one or two of them die, but the others survive.
Mm.
So
I
with
wonder if
that,
one,
the
oh yeah, sorry. I wonder if one of the key dynamics was, and capsicum, I think, in the region is a really good example of this. You did a great video on them as
mm,
well. So they had a small set of more highly domesticated, highly cultivated species
mm,
that they grew in managed areas. But around the margins of those spaces, they would often have weedy or wild
mm,
relatives of those crops. And I think that sets up the conditions for regular hybridization between those
yeah,
gene pools. And like most domestic species come from a hybrid origin. That's kind of what this show is focused on. That
yeah.
scrambling things up creates new opportunities. What do you think about that? I think even with potatoes, there's often like bitter wild ones that are grown in like old beds that aren't as managed in that season.
Yeah, yeah, definitely that could be part of it too. Yeah, I guess for those unfamiliar, there's 5 main domesticated species and a bunch of wild ones that are also grown for food.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I think that was a common practice. I know what like potatoes, as you're mentioning, I didn't look as deep into this area, but I remember looking when I was looking at the potatoes that actually made their way to Europe after the Irish potato famine. A lot of them actually came from pretty far south in the Andes, on Chile's coast, and a lot of those ones, if I recall correctly from the study that was doing a genetic analysis on them, it did notice a lot of introgression of genetic material from wild species after that first domestication
mm,
up in the central Andes. So that definitely could have been part of it. Yeah.
mm. Um, Now, this is probably a more difficult question, but through the history of Indian agriculture, was there a particular era in that history where most of that domestication happened, or was it a more spread out, ongoing process?
Yeah, I haven't read as much on that. It definitely was quite early for many. A lot of the main vegetables you will find remains of the domesticated or semi-domesticated ancestors in tombs and stuff like that, and it's often dated at least 3,000 years back. So a lot of them go quite a ways back at the very least.
Yeah, so much of this history is difficult to reconstruct. Like we have little fragments of evidence here and there that can't give you a hint about dates, but they're never definitive because if you find something 3,000 years ago, it was probably like
Mhm.
4,000 years there was some, but you don't have evidence from that time.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a difficult question to throw at you. Um, Now, I have read a lot about how when maize spread into North America, it displaced a lot of early domesticated crops from regions like sumpweed, I think is a good example of that, of a crop that
Mm,
the North American indigenous people just stopped growing pretty much because maize was so much
mm.
better. And I wonder if something similar happened in the Andes when maize finally got through the very narrow rainforest barrier between Central America and South America. Do you have any insights into that impact?
Hmm. That's yeah, that one I don't know as much. It was quite an early introduction
Hmm.
of maize or yeah, corn, I guess I'm used to saying. The is it in Australia, is it maize usually?
People
Or
normally say corn. We there's not much
oh,
of a
okay.
there's not much of a maize growing culture here. I'm trying to change
Oh yeah.
that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So to my knowledge, it I don't know of anything specific to that, but I do know it did definitely gain a lot of prominence, especially later in Andean history.
Mm.
Like yeah, it's what was it, like 4,000 years ago it was introduced into the Andes or something like that. And it took a few centuries to get adopted, but it did come to become a staple, usually secondary to root crops like potatoes.
Mm.
And but when the Inca came to power, as I kind of mentioned in one of my videos, they were huge fans of corn, and they made it like to them it was the best thing since sliced bread.
Mm.
They would have well, I show some artwork in that video as well, but one of the funny ones I find is just the statue of Pachacuti, who's the known as the founder of the Inca Empire, and his scepter that he's holding has a little corn cob on top. They even told the Spanish that they were the ones who brought corn to the Andes themselves and introduced it to everyone.
Mm.
So uh, huge in their rituals and everything. So for them, I think it kind of dimmed down the importance of some of the more local crops. But I don't know about specific early on events.
That's a really interesting dynamic that you point out that their story is that they brought the maize and then leveraged its productivity to create that empire, to
Hmm.
like bring all of those diverse people under one governance. And I wonder if that has parallels with I'm really obsessed with the Yamnaya people from
Mm,
Black Sea. So they domesticated the horse and were the first people who
mm,
learnt how to ride them. And that was the biological technology that they used to spread and conquer all the way from India to
mm,
basically Ireland in a really short period of time. So yeah, I
hmm,
wonder if there's parallels there with the Inca and corn.
hmm.
Hmm.
That's yeah. I don't know. I know part of why they liked it so much. It was very good for making corn alcohol,
Hmm.
and so that was a big thing. They well sometimes. Oh, actually, a funny side with the corn alcohol is sometimes that does claim gets exaggerated because apparently some of the early chroniclers talk about all the buildings they had in the royal estates, and there's lots of mentions of these akawasi, which is like corn alcohol house, basically. So it looks like they're really, really indulgent, but it also turns out that word sounds almost exactly like another word instead of corn alcohol meaning excrement. So actually, a lot of those were toilets. So it was huge there, but that's just a funny little thing that shows up in the historical record.
Mm. Well, a topic related to that, you might have seen with my work, I'm really focused on achira or canna. And I
Mm,
believe that's
mhm,
one of the really early crops that were domesticated in that region, and that it was mostly abandoned later. It probably got replaced by things like maize, where maize grew well. But
mm.
did you experience or observe that crop being still grown and used in the Andes very much?
I sadly I didn't get to see it much. That was one that I knew about it, but I didn't get to see it when it was there. I know you
Mm.
can sometimes find it grown as an ornamental here in Canada, but
Mm.
haven't been able to positively identify the right species for that. Yeah, you're breeding that to adapt to your local area in Australia there, I think,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. 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 Well, I mean, and I've read accounts that it used to be roasted in giant stone oven pits and then
Mm,
fermented into like a ceremonial alcoholic drink once a
mm,
year and in part of a big ceremony. I think that might still happen in one little valley somewhere.
hmm,
So maybe one day I'll get to jump on a plane and go and investigate and see if it's true. But
yeah.
so I'm on the same latitude as Peru, but I'm only at 100 meters elevation, and I'm trying to gather a picture of what kind of agriculture happens in the relative
Mm,
lowlands where there's some moisture for part of the year, but occasionally droughts as well.
hmm. Yeah, okay, that might be tricky to make a direct comparison,
Mm.
because most until you start to hit like southern Chile, a lot of the lowlands will be either Amazon rainforest or really dry desert.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, it might be hard to draw comparisons. And southern Chile, there you might find more, but it's not an area I researched as much.
Mm.
Um, I know there is one. This is actually maybe it's from a very different elevation, but apparently it has found use in lowlands. It comes from the very highest range, the Waru Waru that I mentioned in the documentary with the ridge fields. They have the
Mm.
raised beds and then canals running alongside. Those, from what I remember reading, they have been found use in some other environments as well, including down into the Amazon. So, I mean, those could be a potential one if there's some moisture but needs more consistency. I don't know.
Yeah,
Just
yeah. I think canna might be a good choice for cropping here because I believe it comes from seasonally dry wetlands that are in the dry
mm,
areas, so it can handle quite a lot of water. It can handle drying out. It even likes being set on fire occasionally, which is great for Australia because our landscape is fairly flammable. But yeah,
right.
it's such an intriguing puzzle matching plants from different parts of the world when you move them around. Um,
Mm,
and I guess that was part of the advantage of the Andes that you have all of these little pockets of different soil and microclimate,
mm,
and they're all. It's the right balance of being connected to each other that humans can walk between those places fairly easily,
yeah.
but they're separated enough that distinct populations of crops and plants can live in each one.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's I guess one of the reasons to go back to why they were able to domesticate so many. I think probably that communication between zones helped a lot.
Mm.
Like I mentioned in that video, how a lot of societies there would have kind of one family split up in little satellites throughout the different zones. So if you have that, you have where you can exchange varieties between and spread them around really easily and get them adapted to local environments. So I imagine that helps a lot with domestication.
Mm. That way that the cultures spread out in the landscape reminded me a lot of stories I've read about Hawaiian traditional agriculture,
Mm,
that each tribe or family would have a slice going all the way from the beach up to
mm,
the tip of the mountain, and they'd farm different species at different elevations.
mm. Yeah, I think someone actually mentioned that in the comments, and that I hadn't heard of that before. That sounded interesting. It's like I guess kind of almost like a pie slice going from the
Yeah,
coast inward, right? Something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I guess it would follow the valley that would probably run. You'd end
Mm,
up with ridges and valleys going out from the main
hmm,
peak. Mm.
hmm.
Uh, now, I've been mad about plants my entire life, and I've seen a few things in your videos that I didn't know about before and was just amazed by.
Mm.
And one of them was the cow tree with its
Oh yeah.
edible milky sap, and it got me really curious to talk to you about unusual forms of edible plants. So we're used to thinking about edible seeds or
Hmm.
tubers, but then you get a whole bunch of other parts of plants which could be edible, either in like wild plants or potentially domesticated. And I wonder if you have any thoughts about other unusual like plant parts or what other ways of using plants that are different from the norm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. There are some fun examples out there. I guess thinking of like herbs and spices, there maybe it's a little less strange when it gets into like bark and twigs.
Yeah.
But for things that are like a main food, there are a number of trees where the cambium, like the inner bark, is edible.
Mm.
I know linden trees around here; those can be a nice little nibble. Sometimes just scrape off a bit and chew it. Um, the sago palm, that's a really interesting one where yeah, you cut that one open and you take out the starch from inside the trunk of the thing.
Mm.
um, haven't got to try that one yet. Oh, around here with foraging, cattail pollen is one I really enjoy. I know there's some pollens more common as like medicinal supplements or things like that, but cattail pollen, it produces enough that you can get quite a decent amount and actually use it as a flower.
Yeah, yeah. I've wondered about that in particular for domesticating new species to
Mm,
maximize the yield and the quality of the pollen because
hmm.
it's such an unusual product. And you see some wind pollinated trees, you give them a kick and like clouds and clouds of pollen come
Yeah,
out of it. It's like how could we potentially make that something that we use?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Those are fun ones. Oh, I guess one other one that it's not exactly the plant part, but an unusual way to use it is using ash as a food.
Yes, 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 yeah. Yeah, traditional cultures use that all over the
Yeah,
place in really interesting ways and seem to know that different qualities of ash come from different plants in the landscape.
yeah. I know in PNG when I was there, there was the one tree that they would take the leaves of and burn it, and apparently it was good at collecting salt, I guess. So they would extract salt out of that, or some here I know, yeah, they just sprinkle it on as a seasoning. It's yeah.
Yeah. Have seen similar accounts in I don't know if you've ever read Buffalo Bird Woman's uh
Um,
memoir. So she was with the Lakota in uh somewhere in the central part of the US. And
hmm,
she grew up before the Europeans arrived and lived long
hmm,
enough to write a book about how they did agriculture in detail. So it's an amazing book. Not many people know about it. I recommend you have a
hmm.
look at it. You can maybe make an interesting video out of it. Who knows?
Oh yeah, that's might have to make a note of that. Yeah.
Yeah, yep. Now I have one more big question about South America, and it's on the other side of the continent. And
Hmm.
recent archaeological analysis have shown that the Amazonian basin was cultivated just a few centuries ago. Like it had all of these people
Hmm.
and structures and agriculture. Do you have a picture about what the agricultural system looked in that like in that part of the world?
Hmm. I guess, yeah, if there was one part of world history I could go back in time to study, I think that would be it.
Get the time machine out.
Yeah, yeah. Long story short, I think I have a mental image, but I don't know how accurate it is, and it is one I'd love to research it more. I know you do get like tantalizing little hints from some of the reports from like the explorer Francisco de Orellana. He was the first person known to navigate the whole Amazon, and he
Mm,
reported like this big sprawling civilization that seems to have just yeah disappeared from disease almost right away.
mm,
And then the lidar finding those roads, like yeah, I guess I got a slight glimpse of that when I was in Ecuador. Actually, I stayed there in kind of the high Amazon region with a indigenous group who was living a semi-traditional, semi modernized life, and they had a forest garden there with a plethora of different like food and medicinal plants, and it's It's mind blowing at the time, much more three dimensional than I'm used to gardening being here in Canada.
Mm.
So I don't know how closely that would mirror the vanished lowland agriculture. But I picture it as kind of a taller version with lots of Brazil nuts, unfamiliar fruits. But yeah, I would love to explore that subject more.
I wonder if people in the Andes today have any cultural memories of what their
Mm,
neighbors in the Amazonian basin were doing in the past. That
mm,
might be a place to look as well. I mean, it also
yeah.
makes me wonder, like, both of those civilizations were severely impacted by contact and epidemics, but I wonder if there are reasons why the Andean cultures managed
Mm,
to persist and bounce back, whereas the Amazonian ones seem to have disappeared without a trace. Do you have any thoughts
mm.
about that? Like, again,
Oh,
does it have something to do with their agricultural systems?
hmm. That is a really great question. Yeah, I'm not sure on that one. That would yeah, I don't like disease immunity. Would that have been different between them? Is it just easier to fight those diseases in a drier climate? I don't know. That would be one I would have to now you got me wondering too. Yeah.
My theory is that with the Amazonian system, their culture was probably more uniformly connected, so the epidemics probably spread
Mm,
a lot faster. And also with
mm,
that kind of ecosystem, once you stop maintaining it, it probably reverted back into a very di
that's
a
yeah.
difficult to manage ecosystem so quickly that their ability to get things back to cultivation would have been more limited.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. Yeah, I know even just the parts of the Andean civilizations that are kind of into the high Amazon, it's a lot harder to find remains of them because it got covered so fast. So I can only imagine in the lowland Amazon,
Mm,
it would
mm.
also disappear a lot faster.
Mm, mm. Now, I've also been binge watching your videos in Papua New Guinea, and you flew from the other side of the planet to check this place out. I'm right next door to it. I'm in Queensland, like just to the south of it, and I haven't gotten up there yet.
Mhm.
Now, I just tell me in general, like what your impressions and experience have been looking around Papua New Guinea.
Wow. Oh yeah, where to start with that one? That was my first time traveling alone actually. I mean, I stopped in the Cook Islands on the way there, but yeah, I was there for a month, stayed with a local guy who brought in volunteers sometimes, and I asked him what sort of volunteer work I would be doing there, and I mentioned that I just started this YouTube channel, and he's like, "Oh yeah, just stay at my place and make those videos."
Mm.
So I slept on the floor of a honey storage hut, stepped on at least 11 bees in that time there. Um, Found out that people raise crocodiles on farms sometimes.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, it that PNG is a fascinating place. Like, I guess yeah, for you maybe it's more familiar being right next door. Here in Canada, very few people know much of anything about PNG, myself included. Before I went,
Mm.
um, it's I mean, I find it very fascinating when it's this area where so many people in the Highlands, especially, were only contacted by outsiders in what was it, the 1940s or
Yeah, yeah,
50s
round
or
about
something.
then.
Yeah, so a lot of you can find a lot of people who might still remember when they first saw metal for the very first time. Um, but at the same time now they're, using cell phones. And it's just this massive cultural update going on there that it's fascinating to see a society adapt so quickly to change. And
I
yeah.
think it's been remarkable how much they've managed to preserve as well of their heritage.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and seeing how they mix new with old as well, I think is another
Mm,
like the one thing that comes with that because many still have their traditional costumes and dress and stuff. But now you can sometimes also see some of them incorporate like noodle wrappers into their into the decorative stuff and but yeah, still maintaining a lot of that traditional agriculture and the crops and it hasn't had those centuries to disappear as well. So and people maybe have more awareness now of what could be lost. So Yeah.
Well, following on from that thorny question about the Andes, I believe maize was introduced into Papua New Guinea sometime
Hmm.
in the last century as well, maybe in the lowlands earlier. And
Hmm.
but you were only in the highlands when you were visiting, so you may not have seen
Yeah.
it used very much.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I don't remember seeing corn very often where I
Mm,
was.
mm,
Definitely a few other introduced crops, but you know, what was it? Chayote. Those things show up fairly often now, and avocados as well. And yeah, there's a number of things that have been introduced.
mm. Yeah, it's a opportunity to observe those changes, not thousands of years in the future, try to reconstruct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, just an interesting question that it's bouncing around in my mind at the moment. But you got to look at a few different members of the pandanus family up in the
Yeah.
highlands. And again, this was a plant that I'd never heard of before, and instantly
Mm,
I'm like, like Australian pandanus grow really well here. It's like, are these
mhm,
things that we should be growing in the subtropical parts of Australia? There might be enough of a correspondence with the middle latitudes of Papua New Guinea that it's worth a try.
mm.
So tell us more about the ways that that unusual family is used as a crop in Papua New Guinea.
Yeah, yeah. Those were really interesting ones. And actually, I think Karuka of the two, that was the plant I was most looking forward to seeing in Papua New Guinea, just because of the kind of fascinating cultural connections it has. But yeah, so I guess the two biggest ones there's Marita, which is the or Buamara, it's known as in pardon my pronunciation of Indonesian words there. But it's this huge red, orange, or yellow fruit, and they cook it. It's picture maybe the size of my upper leg, some of them were, but they cook it for a while, and it breaks down into this really rich, kind of gravy textured sauce that looks like ketchup or mustard. Um, and the other one was Karuka. The it's got these again big, kind of typical looking of pandanus fruits, with each a bunch of little, what do you call those, carpels, or a lot of little nuts inside, surrounded by meaty flesh. So you can eat the whole thing. The nuts taste a little bit like coconut, is what I found. But those are incredibly valued by the people there. Like it comes up in that video I mentioned that there's people valued them so much in places that they would actually invent whole new languages for when they're harvesting them. Just kind of tying into the traditional spiritual beliefs there. They depending on the group, it could be that either speaking in regular language might harm the fruits, or it could be that it alerts the certain scary spiritual figures to their presence, and they don't want to alert them. So it makes for a really fascinating case where when they're going up into the high mountains to harvest the wild Karuka, they speak this code language and nothing else. And when they come down, they never speak that language. So somehow it just really makes me wonder how do people first learn that language?
Mm.
It's you can't get instructed in it because you can only speak it when that's all you can use. But yeah, fascinating stuff.
So the Karuka that grows in the higher elevations, is that still a wild harvested plant, or does it undergo some management or domestication?
To my knowledge, it is still a wild one. Um, whether how often it gets harvested does kind of turn into some sort of management, I'm not sure. But yeah, it is known as there's the domesticated Karuka and the wild Karuka. They're seen as, I think, kind of a species complex, but sort of separate
Okay.
species.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I did want to touch on linguistics as well. Is that another thing that you're passionate about? I heard my ears pricked up when I heard you explore that interesting topic.
Yeah, that is also kind of an interest of mine. It's taken the back burner a bit when I'm more focused on plants here, but yeah, definitely an interest as well.
Well, we'll get back to talking about more Papuan crops in a second, but while
Mm,
we've got this really interesting uh, secret language for harvesting a particular plant, which is just such an amazing idea. Um,
yeah.
so Papua New Guinea is probably the most linguistically diverse place on the planet. Like there's
Hmm.
800 languages, and they're not just minor variations of each other. Like they have really deep roots. They're mutually unintelligible, and
Hmm.
but at the same time, they also have a language called Tok Pisin, which is
Hmm.
a kind of trade language that everyone speaks. So if you're
Hmm.
traveling through the country, you can still at least make uh, basic communication as possible. And
Hmm.
it's got me wondering if something like this might happen with the internet as a way that
Hmm.
people all across the world are communicating with, that we could see something like a global auxiliary language that isn't too complicated, so you can learn it pretty easily. You can't like create a really rich literary experience out of it, but if you want to say
Hmm.
how much for those bananas, anybody on the planet can understand you. But at the
Right.
same time, that kind of incentive is created by this digital communication across the planet. Um, the wish to be difficult to survey, to have secret little pockets of languages like argos that are just for a small community to be able to talk to each other, that could spring up at the same time. So if you
Hmm.
and this happens a little bit with like lingos and special words, or even like Gen Alpha brain rot language is
Yeah.
created as a way to like make the adults frustrated that they don't know what you're talking about with your teenage friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think about that idea that language could be on track to evolve in really surprising ways in the future because of technology?
Yeah. It is an interesting idea. I mean, yeah, it's a bit late for Esperanto to kind of take over the world,
Mm,
but yeah, I guess on the one hand, like English seems at the moment pretty set to become kind of the global language, but you yeah could also see where languages are always changing over time. So maybe it'll be more of a simplified version of English,
mm.
simplified grammar and stuff like that. I don't know. It's things are getting a bit hard to predict with how technology is going these days.
I
Uh,
mean, it's a bit of a race as well because Google Translate, at least if you have text,
mhm.
is free to anyone with an internet connection, and it does a decent
Yeah,
job. Occasionally, it messes up minor details that could be
yeah,
important, but normally it's enough to kind of struggle along. But
hmm,
because it's in text, it's kind of clunky getting things in and out of it. Whereas if you can just talk to somebody, you can clarify the meaning if you're
yeah,
not sure what somebody is saying. So yeah,
hmm.
anyway, just something that I wanted to get your perspective on.
Oh yeah,
Okay, let's talk about some other Papuan crops. So I'll let you pick one that you think is really interesting to talk about.
oh yeah. Okay. Um, like I guess yeah, New Guinea is interesting in just that I think when people think of it, they often think of like hunter gatherers, but it's there are some some societies like that there, but it's also one of the big centers of crop domestication. And so yeah, a bunch that of familiar crops were probably at least partially domesticated there. I guess of ones that are mainly found there. One that I found interesting was one of the pits, and it's so sugarcane was is one that was probably at least partially domesticated in New Guinea, but pit there's multiple plants called that. So highland or lowland pit, that's the one. It's a type of sugar cane that the flower it produces on top never quite manages to escape the leaf sheath around it. So it sits inside the whole time, bleached and soft, and it basically like a cauliflower
Mm.
sitting on top of a sugar cane. That was one I found pretty neat. Um, what were some of these? They did have some greens that tasted. They called them mushroom plants, and they kind of have a mushroomy cucumbery sort of a flavor.
Is that one of the rungias, I
That
believe?
was the yeah,
Yeah.
Rungia. I forget the rest of the species name, but yeah, it's one of those. You know they do have bananas are another one
Mm.
from the area, and they do have the tallest species of bananas there, which can grow up to about 100 feet or what's that like 30 meters.
Yeah.
Confusing
It
it.
just land of the giants when you're walking around those plants. Quite
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
And it's frustrating in my part of Australia. Our summers are often hot and wet enough for Papuan crops to grow well,
Mm,
but then the rest of the year it's too cold or too dry, and some summers
mm,
are completely dry, so you get no crop. So it's this huge resource that's sitting right next door to us, but it doesn't quite match our local conditions.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am curious if the Karuka and Marita especially, if they could spread. I know there's niche interest in using the some of the oils as like health things or things like
Mm.
that. So I'm curious if that could spread some.
Well, it's a large genus, and we do have a lot of
Hmm.
native pandanus that handle our conditions very well. So the
Hmm.
ideal in my mind would be to hybridize some of those uh,
Mm,
edible domesticated forms from Papua New Guinea with locally adapted forms that handle our microclimate and take it from there. And you could
right.
probably do something really interesting with them.
Mm.
Were you also a fan of the winged beans that you encountered up
Oh
there?
yeah. Yeah, those were nice too. Um, yeah, so I guess those have spread a bit more around Southeast Asia. Now I can actually find them in international grocery stores here in Canada, which
Hmm.
is kind of nice. But yeah, those are a nice one. They've got, well, the whole plant is edible. You can eat the leaves, um, the the immature beans, the dry beans afterwards, and the roots are actually a root vegetable.
Mm,
And yeah, I know there are some people have been wondering whether they might be kind of a competitor for soybean in different locales where soybeans don't grow as well.
hmm
It's I think at the moment there's a few things that limit it. It's got just a bit of an awkward growth habit and day length sensitivity, but that one, yeah, that's a really solid vegetable.
mm, mm, mm. Do you have any plans to go back to the region and maybe other locations in Southeast Asia? I guess the flying that distance is a bit of a barrier.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I don't know if plans, but hopes. Yeah, I actually this last summer, my wife and or 2024 summer, my wife and I were in Southeast Asia, and so just very slow pumping out the videos. So there will be some videos coming out on plants from that region as well. But yeah, still a lot more I'd love to explore in the New Guinea, Southeast Asia area.
Mm,
Definitely.
mm, mm. And are there any other parts on your wish list further around the planet? I'd have a couple
Oh,
on mine, but I'm curious to see where you want to go.
oh yeah. Well, I guess the Amazon got mentioned already.
Mm,
Um, Borneo would be another big one for agriculture as well as just natural. Some of these are more for agriculture, some more for kind of natural features of the area.
are you going
But
to Kinabalu to see the Nepenthes?
oh, I didn't get to see many Nepenthes when I was there. That was one of my regrets.
Mm,
I would love to, yeah, I would love to go there and see those.
mm, mm,
Um, Africa, that's also, I know that's a huge, broad area, but there's, I guess, so much in there that's just not really known. And I know a lot of crops are just local there and haven't really spread to the rest of the world.
mm,
And
mm.
yeah, a lot of overlooked stuff there that I would love to learn about and see. Um,
If you get to go
Hawaii,
to Zimbabwe, you have to catch
mm,
up with Gus Lebreton. He's a
yeah,
plant hunter down there that I interviewed, and yeah, he knows where all the good stuff is in that part of the continent.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I saw your interview with him. That was really interesting.
Mm, mm. What about Ethiopia? Is that on your
Ooh,
list of places to go? Because it's another one of these kind of overlooked centers of domestication.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, within Africa, that would, I think, maybe the things that don't stand out the most would be Ethiopia, maybe Madagascar,
Mm,
and well, South Africa has a lot of interesting, unique flora, um, and the Congo rainforest. There's a lot of areas, but yeah, Ethiopia, definitely,
mm, mm. Just
definitely.
just wait for the current civil war to calm down a little bit more.
Yeah, that might make it a bit easier.
Now, in general, this podcast is concerned about the sustainability of industrial agriculture as we currently know it. I don't know how interested you are in that, but what do you think the role of these surviving pockets of traditional agriculture could be in the future?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I definitely see with the how industrial agriculture is run, I definitely see areas of concern there. And I mean, you see people working towards better sustainability in some of those areas, but how far will that get them with this whole situation with massive yields, but also large amounts of pesticides and fertilizers and the runoff effects? Um, I mean, when you're when you're doing monoculture as much as that, you're just you're just one Panama disease or Irish potato blight away from a big staple crop collapsing. So I can see how when those things do collapse, or hopefully before, um, or I don't know, something external like a global nuclear war, I can see how people practicing traditional localized agriculture could have a much better chance of living through that. Um, and so, yeah, hopefully, I mean, you do see some push towards increased diversity of crops. But I think that that's a big thing of value that the traditional agriculture offers is maintaining those pockets of diversity.
hmm hmm are there any practices or attitudes that you've observed in traditional farmers that might be something that we can learn from in the West?
Hmm. Well, yeah, I guess that mentioning diversity, that is probably the biggest one that comes to mind. I mean, yeah, I got uniformity makes things easier in a lot of ways. You have one specific potato, you know what you'll get in the end. It's easy to make machinery for it, and consumers recognize it and look at it and go, I know that potato. I know how to use it. I mean, I don't know how everyone's internal monologue goes, but uh, but yeah, you have the potato famine or like Panama disease that wiped out the Gros Michel bananas, and those identical potatoes will all be identically susceptible.
hmm
So, and actually, yeah, in the Andes where catastrophe was kind of commonplace in that way, with it being so unpredictable, that's that's one of the things they were always on guard for in a way, because yeah, you'd learn to plant four types of potatoes in a field instead of just one, and maybe also plant oca and mashua and some of these other root vegetables, and just I mean, it's a lot easier when you're doing it by hand than with a machine, but then when disaster hits, you're not left with nothing.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Now it's one thing to visit parts of the world, but if you could live like long term in some other like exotic location, do you have one that you think you would feel comfortable in long term?
Hmm, that's a good question. It's, hmm. I would definitely miss the prairies moving away. The As much as I like year-round green, the the prairies and the boreal forest here definitely have a special place for me. But I do like the tropics. So I don't know, the Cook Islands, that was quite beautiful, but a bit isolated. So maybe not that. Singapore, I find really interesting, but I feel I would get tired of living in a big city. So I think in my mind it might be a tie between Ecuador and Costa Rica.
hmm
Actually,
hmm
I think both gorgeous countries, but with a lot of variation from region to region, highlands to lowlands,
mm, mm.
and yeah, could grow some of the temperate crops and also tropical, and you have it all nearby.
That's one thing I really miss having in Australia. Like I'm in the mountains and I'm 100 meters above sea level.
Oh yeah,
It's such a flat continent. It's just a big pancake. So yeah,
right.
having that variation in altitude is something I'm very jealous of people, particularly like highland tropics, I think are like just these magical little islands in the world.
Yeah, yeah. It's as a prairie dweller, it's also probably even more mind blowing because I'm used to you look out and there's the horizon flat all the way around.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I have to let my eyes adjust for a few days whenever I go near mountains.
Mm. Now, I wanted to spend some time talking about your experiences with YouTube because I'm planning on going in a similar direction with this show and adding other things on. And I'm curious, like, what motivated you to start on YouTube and what are your
Hmm.
long-term goals?
Hmm. Yeah, I guess some of that I guess I kind of touched on about trying to communicate that passion to others, the fascination I have to communicate that. Um, I think, yeah, long-term goals are basically just an extension of that. Assuming I can sustain this and continue to grow the channel. I know the documentaries like that one I released, those seem to do really well, and I'd love to do more like that, getting to dive really in depth in one topic like that. Um, I know even just here home in Canada, I would love to do some of Canada's ecoregions, like especially looking at the prairies, which there's actually very little left of certain parts of the prairies.
Mm.
Most of it's turned into cropland. I would I would love to do one, though this was a very long term goal, of starting at like the south border of Canada where I am, and looking at how it changes as you head all the way to the northernmost point.
Oh, wow, that would be amazing. And if you do those videos well, they're evergreen. Like they're kind
Yeah,
of they have a permanent interest from the audience. They're not just, the news of the week.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, and so to be able to see like how the vegetation changes, how the people use the plants differently, and as you go further north. Um yeah, other civilizations too outside the Andes. I'd love to. Amazonian again.
Mm.
I think Khmer Empire is interesting and not talked about that much. In Cambodia, they had some interesting waterworks. Polynesians. um North American indigenous cuisine would be another big one, actually, that
Mm.
I'd love to learn more about.
Mm. Mm. There's just so much that you can
And
delve
then,
into.
yeah, yeah,
Are there any particular YouTube channels that inspired you to get started creating your own?
yeah. There were a few channels. I think at first, though, my biggest inspiration was actually not a YouTuber, but it was Steve Irwin,
Ah,
Crocodile
yes.
Hunter.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, he and I obviously have very different demeanors, and I cannot pull off his explosive enthusiasm. And it is harder to get people enthusiastic about plants than animals.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I did love that he was clearly fascinated with what he was talking about, and it made it hard not to get us excited along with him.
Mm.
So, um, yeah, a lot of YouTubers I knew at the time were also more of that kind of loud, big personality. But I, David Attenborough was maybe an inspiration. That was the opposite. But him, I kind of looked at and got, I can't do what he does. I don't have that accent. Um, but I guess one YouTuber that inspired me the most actually is, there's a guy who goes by Weird Explorer.
Yeah. Yeah. I
He,
thought
okay, yeah,
I guessed that would be one of them. Yeah.
yeah. He's an interesting character. His main job, which you'd have no idea if you just watched his fruit videos, is he's actually a contortionist and sword swallower.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And but yeah, he travels for his work, and with that, his mission is to document himself tasting every fruit in the world, basically.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and I think watching him, it inspired me that his demeanor is a lot more like mine, more calm and laid back, not much fancy footage, at least back then in his earlier videos. But people seem to enjoy watching it. So I think that helped give me motivation to try to start myself as well. Oh, another one too. Learn Your Land. He's another good one. He does foraging kind of here
Hmm.
in North America.
I
But
th
yeah, those
I
are.
think you've been successful on that front. The sincerity, I think, is the most critical limiting resource on YouTube these days, particularly with
Mm,
AI flooding.
mm,
Uh, Being a real person who really cares about something and managing to get that
mm,
across consistently is that's the limiting resource on the
mm,
platform.
mm,
Now, you also, for people who don't dive into creating videos, they probably don't realize like how much work can be involved behind the scenes. And
mm,
like yeah, just researching and then filming and then editing in particular can be a real time sink. And
mm.
what's been your experience with like managing all of those demands? Are there ways that you've found of managing those workflows where you don't spend time
Mm.
unnecessarily?
Yeah. Yeah. It's still an ongoing area of progress there. Yeah, no, to be honest, growing has been difficult. Um, that It is difficult to build that momentum when like my workflow. It's not my workflow is not slow, but my video making process is fairly slow
Mm,
because yeah, a lot of reading. I'm pretty slow at the editing, and it's also in that awkward spot where I need to put bread on the table. So I kind of want to treat this as a job, but it's income wise, it's more of a intense hobby that makes a bit of income. So striking that balance is tricky, but I've definitely found a lot of tricks to help me work faster. Um, core, yeah, learning a lot of the self discipline with like, I now kind of log my time and make sure, okay, I'm working on this task. I start my task list for the day. Um, I try to coordinate, okay, if this is, one of the tasks that's a lot more dreary, I try to, okay, just do a half hour chunk of this and then do something else, half hour. There's a lot of little things like that that I think help help with motivation,
mm, mm.
help from getting stuck in any one particular task.
It's interesting seeing recently a lot of very large, very successful, very highly produced YouTube channels have shut
Mm,
down. Like by all
mm,
superficial measures, they're as successful as you can be, but so
mm,
much goes into each video that they create that it's not actually profitable to
mm,
run the business that way. Whereas I think the smaller channels that do it more cautiously and casually could actually have a higher return on investment as long as they don't get sucked into, I'm going to keep buying more expensive cameras and doing more complicated editing and hire a
right,
team to do all of these things for me. If you keep
right.
it within bounds, you might be more successful and more sustainable.
Mm, yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. Video making can definitely you can do it cheaply and you can do it very, very expensive.
Mm, mm.
And
And have you branched out into other platforms with your content, or are you only focusing on YouTube for now?
yeah, I've done a little bit, not much. That's probably one area that would probably help my channel grow more. And my wife keeps telling me I should post more on Instagram. Um, so I do a little bit on Instagram and Facebook. I'm trying to get into making shorts a little more often, so those are at least directly transferable
Yeah, yeah.
to the other platforms.
That cross promotion can turn into like a whole other job, which not many people actually enjoy
Yeah,
doing.
yeah, yeah. I tried sharing on Reddit, but that's a trickier platform because I think my account got banned for self
Yeah,
promotion or something there.
yeah. It Reddit is fairly non-functional on that front in my experience too. What
Yeah,
about
when people
podcasts?
share,
Is this the
I
first
have
podcast that you've done?
yeah, this is actually
Mm, mm.
yeah. So this has been fun. Um, but yeah, I think collaborations. I haven't done any yet, and that is something I'd like to do a little bit more. Um, yeah, if I can see if I can find some fruits that Weird Explorer hasn't tasted yet, or I don't know. uh, yeah, so yeah, it is an area. I know. Yeah, to go back to just Reddit, that one has been helpful when other people have shared my stuff. But yeah, it's just the doing it myself. That part I've found I can't really do. My first video to actually take off was because just one of my friends shared it on Reddit there and got my first 1,000 view video.
And I'm guessing you run your channel pretty much solo. Am I right with that? And what are the pros and cons of working that independently?
Yeah, for the most part, it's solo. My wife helps out a little bit, but we for the most part, it's just me. Um, Pros, I mean, I can do what interests me. I have pretty free reign. Obviously, I don't have to edit it to someone else's wishes, I guess. Um, for cons, there's obviously the extra work of having to the slog of trying to get self funding, keeping up the motivation, and can't really share the parts I'm not as good at with someone who's better with them. So
Mm, mm.
it's definitely a trade off. I do enjoy it though.
Do you suspect putting all of this work into the channel is going to open doors in the future? Like there might be opportunities that you can say, I have this channel. Would you be interested in allowing me to do something? It puts you in a really different position, like particularly like traveling to odd parts of the world and talking to people who have already, you know, spent most of their life building up unusual enterprises.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it might. And I don't know what exactly that looks like. I don't want to be too overly optimistic, but I know it does. It feels like it helps that I now have one documentary that did really well,
Mm.
and that's something I can point to as here's an example of what I can do. Um, so yeah, I am curious if I could bring that to like a conservation organization or some countries. I know that tourism boards might be interested. Plant education, it's maybe a little harder to sell
Yeah,
to a
yeah.
tourism board or something, but yeah, I'm hoping it opens some doors.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm finding a similar thing with the podcast now. I've been doing it for a year
Mhm.
and kind of proving that a lot of podcasts, people record 3 episodes and then realize it's a lot of work and they kind of lose
Oh
interest.
yeah,
But I'm finding there's a momentum now that I can approach people and say, I've been doing this for a while. Here are some of the people I've
yeah,
already spoken to. And I'm getting a much higher rate of people saying, oh, that sounds interesting. I'll give it a go.
yeah, yeah. And I guess you've been on other podcasts too. I think I listened to there was one with was it Joseph Lofthouse? The
Oh yes, yeah. That was early in the. He's kind of what got me started in recording my own. So
mm,
it's been an evolution, but I love the medium mostly because it is not so heavy on the editing side compared to video,
right,
where you can spend 10 to 100 times more hours polishing everything. Whereas with a podcast, it's just that immediate connection and authenticity and thinking on the spur of the moment.
yeah, definitely. The few videos where I don't show my face, they usually take a lot longer because I need to do a lot more with the B-roll, but the actual editing, the narration part is far quicker. I know
Mm.
video slows things down a lot.
Yeah, that's a challenge that's on the horizon for me. So I'll see how I go,
Oh yeah.
adding it
Oh, you
onto the
planning to?
pile. Yeah, well,
Oh yeah.
like I said, the podcast will be coming out on YouTube as well with some farm B-roll footage to go over the audio.
Right.
But I'm hoping to do some shorter, more uh, concentrated and polished videos as well to add to the project. But I'm going to take
Hmm.
my time doing those. I see all this advice that you have to put a video out every week, and it's like, no, I'm gonna make sure each video is really something that I want to put out as an evergreen kind of building collection of interesting perspectives.
Right.
Mm. And no, we should probably wrap things up, but I have a final fun question that I ask everybody, and I'm really curious to see where you go with this one. But if you could wave a magic wand and create a new life form, or maybe take some obscure regional crop and share it with the rest of the world, like people need to know
Mhm.
about this thing, what would you wish into existence or kind of, wish into popularity and awareness?
Oh, that's a good question.
Multiple answers are allowed too. You're not restricted to one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess there's the cliche answer of a tree that grows every type of fruit on it. That's that's maybe a little too. I hmm. One thing that's maybe this is a weird choice, but one thing I've always been interested in the idea of is, well, certain plants you'll have like a cabbage, and then you'll have kohlrabi where the stem just bulbs out. So if you could take that sort of thing and implant it into a bunch of other plants, what would it get? Like, what does a dill bulb look like?
Hmm.
Um,
Oh,
I don't
that's
know. That
that's
seems like
that's
a,
Finocchio fennel.
I guess, yeah,
Mm,
yeah. It's just yeah, a dill version of yeah.
mm.
But I don't know. Maybe a tree that would fruit in the dead of winter here in Canada. Here in the,
Ah.
I mean, we have a few fruits that you can forage into the winter because they stay on, but one that actually produces in the winter, that would be in the middle of a minus 30 Celsius day. Um, yeah, for making something more popular, Some of my favorite ones are ones that I don't know if other people would enjoy quite as much. Is maybe what makes it hard. I'm working on a video right now on Andean root crops, and the one that comes up in there, mashua, it's the most controversial tasting, but I absolutely loved it.
Hmm.
It Some of them taste like a spicy radish mixed with sweet licorice,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it's just a weird combination. But if I could have that in Canada, I would. Maybe I'll go with that.
Well, you'll be pleased to know I've interviewed a couple of people who are breeding Mashua with other species in the genus to
Oh,
see if
really?
they can,
Okay.
because it's pretty particular about where it wants to grow in the world, but there's
Mm,
other species that are more adaptable. So I think there's hope there that it might end up
okay.
breaking out of its original homeland.
I may get my wish right there.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Ambling with Sam,
Mm,
for what has been a really fun conversation. And would you
hmm
like to point people towards where they can learn more about your work? And I very, very highly recommend that they check out your YouTube channel. There's so much there that is worth dipping into.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, the main place to find me would be on YouTube on my channel there, Ambling with Sam. I do also have uh, Facebook and Instagram under the same name, so can always message me or see my very limited posts on those platforms there. So yeah, yeah. No, thanks for this. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Well, thank you very much. To read more about my experimental farming work, book reviews, and random thoughts, sign up for a free subscription to my Substack, Recombination Nation. You can also support the work that I do with a paid subscription, which will open the archive of past posts. Next week, I'll be interviewing Banya Halash, a permaculture and successional agroforestry teacher and experimenter from northern New South Wales.